Welcome back to the DePIN State. I am Nick Hawks. My guest today is Sami Kassab with Messari. Sami, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You guys have had great guests on, so I'm glad to join them.
Yeah, heck yeah. So speaking of that, before we go any further, make sure if you're watching this, you hit the like and subscribe button. If you see something you really like, go ahead and share it. That helps us with the channel bring on great guests like Sami and make sure that you get the best of what's going on in the DePIN space. So Sami, this is the first time you've been on the channel. You're not new to us. And for a lot of folks, they already know you. But for folks who don't, tell me a little bit about what you do over at Messari.
Yeah, so I'm an enterprise research analyst. So I write long form research. The sectors that I largely cover are DePIN, middleware infrastructure, as well as Bitcoin. But yeah, when I started at Messari, I kind of realized there was a gap in the market for analysts who were covering DePIN, and it was still very early on. And so I, saw that opportunity and jumped on it. And it's really interesting now to see how much the sector has grown. But yeah, my job responsibilities will include market monitoring, keeping an eye on emerging narratives, trends, how the VC environment's looking, what kind of projects are launching and whatnot. And then basically condensing that all down into these research reports for investors, builders, institutions, and so on.
Yeah. You may be one of the only people who talks to as many different folks across the space in Max and I. Just the nature of the job with the consulting side for Gold Hawks, and then what you're doing with Messari is we're talking to VCs and founders and deployers and all of those different people. What are you seeing right now that you're super excited about?
Yeah, so a lot of activity I'm seeing is in the compute sector within DePIN. So I know you haven't had many guests on there talking about the compute. Usually it's either DY or, like the sensor network area. But the compute sector has really taken off recently, largely because of AI. I mean, you've probably heard about how AI has essentially caused like this GPU shortage because everyone's trying to get their hands on these GPUs to either train a model or in order to inference a model. And if you look at all the major cloud providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, they're all struggling to keep up with demand. And so there's been this narrative that decentralized compute networks can help alleviate the GPU shortage by tapping into a lot of the idle GPUs distributed around the world. So, you can think about the GPUs, the high quality GPUs that are sitting in someone's gaming computer, or the GPUs that are just sitting idly in a research lab. So, I mean, one narrative or one thing that DePIN does really well is like aggregating idle resources and allowing other people to leverage them. And so you have a lot of decentralized compute networks, such as like Akash, LivePeer, Render, Flux, basically a lot of these decentralized cloud networks that are working towards basically providing GPU capabilities. And so that's one sector that I think has really been just capturing a lot of people's attention, just because AI is one of those buzzwords that everybody's focused on right now. And everyone's like, what's the intersection of crypto and AI look like? And I actually dug into this recently, and there's a few interesting areas. We could jump into those if you want later on, but yeah, I'd say the compute sector is probably one of the hottest right now.
Love it. Well, we'll jump into the GPU question in a second and the compute side, but we got something we call the GeoNet question on all these shows. The GeoNet is what's a miner? It's a project that you know about. It's a miner that mines what's going on as far as satellite signals and helps make sure that accuracy is accurate down to a centimeter for devices that subscribe to it. You can buy a GeoNet miner, put it up at your house, use code DePIN, should be down in the description, knocks $20 off your next purchase, and super psyched to be supporting those people in the DePIN space. And speaking of that, your boss, Ryan Selkis, is the guy who coined DePIN. That's right?
So to be fair, I coined DePIN.
Okay.
He was just the first to use it in the theses.
Don't let him fire you for saying that.
but like, I was still in that period where I was like, okay, do we propose this? Do we introduce like a new term while there's already like four that exist, whether it's like proof of
Yep.
physical work, TIPIN,
Yep.
𝐻FI? And then he just went ahead and said, you know what? I am manifesting this. We're going to use it. It's going to become a term. And so he was really the first one that kind of proposed it. And since then, it just really has caught on.
Right on. Deepened by Sami Kassab. We should, you should trademark that real fast.
Yeah, no, I
uh,
wanna. I feel like if you bought the .eth name of DePIN, you know, you'd be set.
You'd be
So
okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Let's see. So one of the things that folks watching this do is they deploy these networks. You've been spending a lot of time checking out all these different GPU networks. Let's see. That's the same thing as what people bought for Ethereum. Is that right? The GPUs.
yeah, you could use
Okay.
G. Well, yeah, that was the main type of hardware that was used to mine on Ethereum. And so when
Yep.
Ethereum merged to proof of stake, you had all these like GPUs that needed to be repurposed. And so
Yep.
a lot of these large GPU miners actually were looking for new opportunities, and some of them have started. You know, a lot of these like miners actually shifted towards creating like a high performance computing side of their business, to where they would offer like rendering,
Yep.
you know, machine learning workloads. And so that's kind of like the centralized version. And you've had a lot of like these decentralized networks emerge that basically try to crowdsource GPUs,
Yep.
where like, you know, any individual like us, if we have GPUs and if we're at work and we're not using our actual gaming PC, then you
Yep.
have the opportunity to where you can monetize that idle resource, and somebody else can use it for whatever purpose that they kind of want to use it
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, deepins are great for activating latent resources.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. So for folks who are watching this who may have a closet full of GPUs, what is there a project that's pretty easy that you're like, oh yeah, go check this out and maybe start doing this? Not financial advice, I know, but what are you seeing that's pretty easy to do?
So the interesting thing is like there aren't many live networks where like individuals can go right now and provide their GPUs. There's a lot of networks that are working towards developing or basically being able to provide like distributed GPU compute. Akash is just about to launch their like public test net. So
Okay.
that if you have a decent amount of GPUs there, that would be one option that you can check out. Render Protocol, I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but they recently announced they're going to be migrating to Solana, which just kind of solidifies the whole narrative of Solana as the DePIN chain, which we can also talk about a little bit. Um, they're essentially using GPUs for distributed rendering, you know, whether it's like rendering NFTs, rendering animations,
Yep.
or even any type of like other serious workload, like architects using it to render one of their projects. Um, and so there's a handful of other projects, like you have Jensen, which is a machine learning GPU project where GPUs are strictly used for just like training a machine learning model. And
Yep.
so
Okay.
you can just simply point your GPUs toward that network. And it's kind of similar to like ETH mining, where you had these like mining pools and that you could just participate in it. Some of
Yep.
these GPU networks are architected similar to that, where it's just like this unified pool of resources. You just like place your GPU in there, and then it's like sort of this supercomputer in a way.
Yep. And same power usage as what folks were used to with ETH mining, or is it going to be a little bit different?
Yeah, it's pretty much the
Same. Okay.
same. I think mining in general was just very harsh on any type of hardware, and
Yeah.
I think it's a little less, yeah, power requirements.
Okay. Dig it. Yeah. Let's dive in a little bit to this idea of Solana being the default DePIN chain to build on. Walk me through what you're thinking there, what you're seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, I wrote this brief piece that just was exploring what chains DePINs were choosing to build on, and from what I was seeing, there are a lot of new projects choosing to launch on Solana, as well as a lot of existing projects choosing to migrate over to Solana. So like the
Yep.
two big names that migrated over or are in the process of migrating. So I know Helium just completed their transition. Render is planning on transitioning soon. And then you
Yep.
have a handful of newer projects which chose Solana, such as like Encoy, Teleport. Obviously, you have Hive Mapper on there. And I think there's like this network effect that's being created where
Yeah.
the more DePINs that are launching, the more other developers just kind of are almost biased to just choose that network just because they're like,
Sure.
hey, look at all these big names that have already launched on here. But then I also think if you look at like the fundamentals of the network, at this point in time, it really is superior to like the other options out there. So, I mean, you have Solana processing on average about like 4,000 transactions per second. You look at Polygon, they're doing about 30 on average transactions per second.
Sure.
You also compare the transaction fees. Solana is like 0.00018 cents.
Yeah. We always like keep forgetting a zero in there, but yeah, it's super cheap.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I know a lot of people like to talk about like what's decentralized, what not. But if you look at the networks objectively from like a builder's perspective, Solana does seem like the most attractive option. And you're also starting to see like this general infrastructure appear that's targeting DePINs. And so
Yep.
I think Sphere Labs was one of the first to come out and say, hey, we want to build the payments infrastructure layer for DePINs. So they started out with Helium to where entities don't actually have to purchase HNT anymore, right? They can just directly get access to the data credits.
Yep.
And that's pretty massive when you think about how a lot of like businesses might struggle to actually hold like crypto assets on their balance sheet. This kind of removes the need for that. And so I think if we start to see more infrastructure similar to Sphere Labs be built on Solana, it's kind of just going to solidify it and make it kind of an easy decision for builders. At the end of the day, it really just projects want to build where the developers are at. And so I know there have been a lot of like DePIN specific L1s that have emerged, such as like IOTX, Peak, and even Althea now is entering that race.
Yep.
And while I'm excited to see what they build, the only downside there is like they're going to have to try to attract developers, right? And if you're a developer choosing to build in an ecosystem like Solana versus in this niche ecosystem that isn't really well known yet, you're going to have a hard time kind of convincing those developers to come over. And so we'll see. We have these app specific roll-ups that are actually starting to emerge.
We just talked to one of them. It's funny, like all these people you're mentioning. We had Sphere on the other day. We just had Eclipse on right before you, so we'll launch that right around this episode. So it is amazing to see all these things come together. As we wrap up here, you got any teasers for me? Any projects that you're looking at? You're like, hey, this thing's pretty cool.
Really, a lot of what I'm looking at that's like really interesting me right now is in the compute space, like I was saying. So there's a lot of projects that are working on zero knowledge proofs. And so the compute projects are specifically looking at decentralized compute for AI applications. And so I'll try to just keep this very brief, but like once you integrate ZK proofs into these decentralized compute protocols and you can get like verifiable off-chain computation, then you allow smart contracts the ability to query these AI models. And then the design scope of what you can do on chain is just widely broadened, right? So I think about like what this could mean for DePIN. Think about like a DY protocol, for example. If you have like a machine learning model that can in real time optimize the best route, like node to node to deliver a data package, you can use the machine learning model to basically reduce latency and just find like the quickest and fastest route for data to be sent. Also think about how like gaming is a huge like negative thing that happens within these DePIN protocols. You could train an ML model to basically automatically monitor suspicious activity, right? So instead of somebody having to manually like identify, hey, like there's this node that is looking a little suspicious, its earnings are out of whack.
Totally.
And then just the ability for a lot of parameters to be updated in real time, where like you don't have to wait for the community to come together, vote, and then manually upgrade the code to adjust like the earnings multiplier or whatnot. So it's really exciting what's going to be done there, and that's kind of what I'm keeping an eye on.
Love it. Love it. And if you want to see the Sphere episode we did, check out the card up there. And then if you want to see the Eclipse episode we just did, check out that one up there as well. Ripping. Sami, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing what's going on. Super excited to have you back. Next time you got big news over at Messari. And yeah, really excited to keep following you on Twitter and see what's on your plate. Thanks, buddy.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Nick.